Hola, hola, hola. Buen día, alumnos. Bienvenidos a mi canal. Y para mis suscriptores, es un placer volver a verlos. Me llamo Austin y soy su profesor de español. Hoy hablamos de algunas palabras en español que pueden ser un poco confusas para ciertos estudiantes. Things like this here, that there, these here, or those over there are already a bit confusing in English, but in Spanish they get even more complicated. When you look at all of these words that are up on the screen right now, it can be pretty easy to get overwhelmed if you don't already know exactly what's going on. So let's get right into it. Now, the best way that I can explain these words is by breaking them up into three categories of distance in relation to the speaker and or listener: immediate, close, and far. By immediate, I'm talking about things that are directly around the speaker or listener and could be accessed easily without having to move to a different point. Close is something that the speaker or listener would have to move in order to reach it, but is still near enough that they can see it and access it fairly easily. Far is for everything further than that, where the speaker may or may not be able to see it, or there's just a greater degree of separation involved. Another way to describe these words is that we're talking about things that are here, there, and over there. Starting with the words that describe our immediate vicinity, we have the word aquí. Now, aquí is one of the Spanish words meaning here, and the other one is acá. So what's the difference between these two? Well, generally speaking, aquí can be better translated as right here, and it implies a more specific point in space, whereas acá refers more to the vicinity around us and can be used to describe a broader area. So as an example, when we say estoy aquí, we're basically saying I'm right here in this spot. But if we say crecí por acá, we're saying I grew up around here, referring more to the general area of where the speaker's at in the moment. Now, in English, when we describe nouns that are here with us, we say either this or these. In Spanish, it's a bit more complicated, of course, since our adjectives are either masculine or feminine and singular or plural. So they're going to take on different forms depending on exactly what we're talking about. For starters, when we're talking in general about something that doesn't have a specific assigned gender, we'll say esto for this and estos for these. Generally, we would use this non-gendered form to talk about more abstract things, such as situations or ideas, or if we just don't know the name of something and therefore don't know its gender. Once we start saying this or these to talk about specific things, we'll slightly change the words. For singular masculine nouns, we say este with an e at the end, and for singular feminine nouns, we say esta with an a at the end. Okay, so to say this, we can say esto, este, or esta. So when we want to make our plurals, well, we just have to add an s to the end, right? Nope. The word estes doesn't exist in Spanish, which means that the word estos is going to work double duty here, and is going to be used both for plural non-gendered things as well as plural masculine nouns. And estas is going to apply to plural feminine nouns. Now keep in mind, the pronunciation of all of these words stresses that first syllable, because stressing the second syllable could give us a conjugation for estar, which is part of the reason why that verb is irregular in the first place. Moving on, when we want to describe something being there in Spanish, we have basically three options. So let's take a look about there, which is close by, usually within view or a short distance from the speaker and or the listener. In this case, we'll say ahí. So if we want to say the book is there on the table, that gives us el libro está ahí en la mesa. If the speaker and listener are together, this is going to talk about something that's close to the both of them. But if the speaker and listener are apart, it's going to describe something that's close to the listener, but not to the speaker. So for example, if a mother calls home to her daughter and says, take out the chicken that's there in the fridge, that would best translate to, saca el pollo que está ahí en la nevera. Now, When we want to describe specific nouns which are there, we use basically all the same words like esto as earlier, following the same rules, but they'll drop the T. An easy way to remember this is that you can touch this thing here, but you can't touch that thing there without getting closer to it. And touch starts with a T in both languages. So that, in general, is going to be eso for non-gendered things such as situations, ideas, or things we just don't know the name of. And we'll use ese for masculine nouns and esa for feminine nouns. And just like how we say these, our rules for saying those are the same, meaning that we have to say esos for non-gendered or masculine plural nouns and esas for feminine plural nouns. Again, the word eses just doesn't exist in Spanish. Finally, our last category of words is for things which are over there, or a further distance from both the speaker and the listener. These are used when the speaker would have a greater degree of difficulty in reaching those areas. One of the ways of saying over there is by saying allí, which uses that double L sound, which can sound like our English Y, or even a J, and sometimes an SH in certain dialects. The second way that we would say over there is by saying allá. So what's the difference between those two? Well, generally speaking, allí is used for something that's in a specific location in sight of the speaker and the listener. And allá is used for something that's a more general area, which is pretty much a direct parallel to the difference between aquí and acá. Now, allá can also be used for something over there from an even greater distance, like, let's say, another country, for example. And moving on, our last set of words that describes our nouns in these cases, we're going to use aquello and its variants. So aquello is used to describe something that is over there with a greater degree of separation from the speaker, and is used for non-gendered nouns or abstract ideas. Then we have aquel, which is used for masculine nouns, and aquella for feminine nouns. Lastly, we've got aquellos for, you guessed it, plural masculine or non-gendered nouns, and aquellas for plural feminine nouns. Okay, so that's everything. Now, before we move into our practice round, there's 3 things we need to talk about. Firstly, all of these adjectives, esto, eso, aquello, and their variants, can be used not only to describe nouns, but also to replace them. For example, este libro means this book, but we can also just point to a book and say este, which means this one. Or we could say esas cartas to say those letters, but we could just say esas to mean those ones. Remember that if we do it this way, we always use the proper gender and number for whatever nouns we're going to be replacing. Now, the second thing here, some of the distinctions that we're talking about today are very subjective. And there are times when the speaker's choice of one or another can give us an idea as to where their head's at emotionally in connection to whatever it is they're describing. If someone feels more emotionally tied to something, they may choose one word, and if they want to distance themselves emotionally from something, they may choose another word. As an example, someone's decision to use ahí to say there instead of allí to say over there might mean that they feel that whatever they're talking about is maybe more accessible to them or to the listener. And the last thing, just to throw a monkey wrench into all of this before we start our practice round, the words we learn for here, there, and over there don't just have to describe physical locations, but they can also be used to describe points in time. As if this wasn't confusing enough already, right? So when we say aquí to talk about a situation during a specific moment in the present or the very recent past, and is often used at the start point in a story, whereas acá can be used to describe a longer period of time during the present or recent past, and is often used as an ending point in a story. Moving further out, ahí can be used to describe the somewhat recent past, or the near future if we want, while allí and allá can be used to describe a far-off point or period either in the past or the future. So to give you an example, in the bachata song Hoja en Blanco by Monchi and Alexandra, she says, allí supe que las despedidas son muy tristes, which translates to, there I learned that goodbyes are very sad. Now, sure, we could assume she's talking about a specific place that's far off when she says Allí, but what makes more sense is that she's describing a certain point in time. And because she said Allí instead of Ahí, that tells us that it's a moment far in the past from her perspective. Okay, guys, you got all that? I hope so, because we're going to go ahead and start our practice round now. If you're still feeling a little shaky, feel free to review before and during the practice segment. Remember, these segments are always open book. Now, I'm going to give you some sentences in English, then translate them to Spanish with our target words left blank. It'll be up to you to decide on the correct answers. Now, I'm going to color code our nouns if they're described by one of our mystery words, so you don't get tripped up there. And you'll get 3 questions each. They'll all have 1 word to describe a point in space or time, and 1 word to describe a noun or nouns. You're going to get 5 seconds each to decide on your answers. So feel free to pause and jump around the video as much as you want. Remember, your willingness to try is always more important than getting it right the first time. ¿Estamos listos? Empecemos. Our first sentence is, have you met Mr. Spencer? That man has lived around here for 50 years. Our translation with our blanks is, ¿has conocido al señor Spencer? Hombre lleva viviendo por 50 años. 5 seconds. Think you know it? ¿Has conocido al señor Spencer? Ese hombre lleva viviendo por acá 50 años. Alright, so our next example is, you can't do that. It isn't right. Who here is with me? Our unfinished translation is, no puedes hacer, no es justo. ¿Quién de, está conmigo? Alright, you're up. No puedes hacer eso. No es justo. ¿Quién de aquí está conmigo? Alright, last one. You ready? Can you please bring me that folder with all my documents? It's over there in the garage. Our unfinished translation is, por favor, me puedes traer, carpeta con todos mis documentos. Está, en el garaje. Por favor, me puedes traer aquella carpeta con todos mis documentos. Está allí en el garaje. Alright, so how'd you do? If your answers didn't match all of mine exactly, but you at least got these acceptable alternatives, that's awesome. Your different answers are really just a matter of perspective. So, bien hecho. If your answers didn't match mine or the acceptable alternatives, that's okay. I know you'll get it right next time. Just keep practicing and never, ever give up on yourself. Alright guys, well, that sounds like school's out for today. Thank you so much for joining. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. If you found today's video to be helpful, please leave a like so YouTube knows it's worth sharing with new audiences. And finally, since you've made it this far, I want to share my appreciation with you. The first 10 people who scan this QR code will be enrolled in a free group lesson with me focused on not only helping you to grow your fluency, but also helping me to shape the course of this channel going forward, as well as the subjects of my future videos. Once 10 of you have redeemed, we'll schedule an hour-long video call at some point in the near future with all 10 of us, most likely on a weekend, so it's easy for everyone. I am so excited to meet those of you who win and to more personally help you on your learning journey. Muchísimas gracias por ver. Nos vemos pronto. Ciao.